We're starting our own sect, Sensei Morris.
What's that?
We're starting our own sect of school, school of Buddhism.
Where you just kind of make things up as you go along?
Well, we'll have a ceremony, it just, we put our own touches on it, guys. We've lost our way.
We're forming our own gang.
There you go.
Culture people.
Okay. There we go. Okay.
Okay, how do we like the incense? You like the incense?
I'll light the incense. I need a copy of the service. Are you using that one?
Yeah, we'll grab another one. This one.
Hey, everybody. I don't know who's out there yet. I see there's 3 people online, so that's nice. First time we've streamed a service live in quite a while. So say hello.
Hello.
All right. We'll start in just a minute. I know we got a couple of people coming in. We talk about these things, these rituals, as if they're important, and they are. But they don't have to be done a certain way. Somebody made all this stuff up. It's not like the Buddha transcribed any of this stuff in stone. So if you don't light the candle at the right time, or you don't light the incense at the right time, you won't get the Dharma. But the rituals really are just an opportunity to settle your mind and get focused on what you're doing here. So anyway, so that's what was going on when I started the live stream. Please rise.
Pause. The fragrance of this incense invites the awakened mind to be present with us. It fills our sacred space, guards our minds from wrong thinking. The fragrance of this incense unites us with the virtue, mindfulness, and wisdom we offer on behalf of all beings.
Be seated. Homage to the Buddha. Ding.
Oh, sorry. It's
important.
We put it in 3 times. Oh, no, we say 3 times.
Just hit it once. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. 3 Treasures reading. We go to the Buddha for refuge. Being one with the Buddha, we resolve to each day follow the way of life he laid down for us to walk and awaken to his supreme wisdom. We go to the Dharma for refuge. Being one with the Dharma, the gates of Dharma are manifold. We vow to enter them all. The goal of wisdom is ever beyond. We vow to attain it. We go to the Sangha for refuge. Being one with the Sangha, in the spirit of universal fellowship, we strive for enlightenment of all beings. The Metta Sutta. This is what should be done by one who is skilled in goodness and who knows the path of peace. Let them be able and upright, straightforward and gentle in speech, humble and not conceited, contented and easily satisfied, unburdened with duties and frugal in their ways, peaceful and calm and wise and skillful, not proud and demanding in nature. Let them not do the slightest thing that the wise would later reprove. Wishing in gladness and in safety, may all beings be at ease. Whatever living beings there may be, whether they are weak or strong, omitting none, the great or the mighty, medium, short, or small, the seen and the unseen, those living near and far away, those born and to be born, may all beings be at ease. Let none deceive another or despise any being in any state. Let none through anger or ill will wish harm upon another. Even as a mother protects with her life her child, her only child, so with a boundless heart should one cherish all living beings, radiating kindness over the entire world, spreading upward to the skies and downward to the depths, outward and unbounded, freed from hatred and ill will, whether standing or walking, sitting or lying down, freed from drowsiness. One should sustain this recollection. This is said to be the sublime abiding. By not holding to fixed views, the pure-hearted one, having clarity of vision, being free from all sense desires, is not born again into the world of suffering. Metta prayer. May I be happy and well. May no harm come to me. May I learn compassion. May all my friends, family, and those I love be happy and well. May no harm come to them. May they learn compassion. May all those troubled in body, mind, and spirit be happy and well. May no harm come to them. May they learn compassion. May all those troubled in body, mind, and spirit be happy and well. May no harm come to them. May they learn compassion. May all those who are hurt in body, mind, and spirit be happy and well. May no harm come to them. May they learn compassion. May all my enemies be happy and well. May no harm come to them. May they learn compassion. May all living beings be happy and well. May no harm come to them. May they learn compassion. So if we can go ahead and take down the lights. I'm going to do a guided meditation tonight. I'm going to be talking about compassion. So if I can keep from having a coughing fit, I will guide you through a compassion meditation. As the sound of the bell fades, just take a few deep breaths. Focus on letting your abdominal muscles be nice and relaxed, soft, so the diaphragm can do what it does and the lungs can fill and empty smoothly, completely. And as you exhale, just let this phrase ride softly or quietly on your breath, just thinking this as if it's emerging from your heart as you're breathing out. May I be happy. May I be free from animosity. May May I be free from stress and affliction. May I look after myself with ease. May all beings be happy. May all beings be free from animosity. May all beings be free from stress and affliction. May all beings look after themselves with ease. So we're going to develop compassion, which is the desire for someone to be free from suffering. And we'll start with ourselves. And we're going to do a process of sending and receiving. So as if you're receiving suffering, taking it into your heart and using your compassion to transform it into freedom from suffering. So it's important not to overthink this too much. Just kind of follow the instructions and you'll find that this has a lot of power when you practice it over time. So to begin, I'm going to use the thought, may I be free from suffering. And so take a moment to think about some of the difficulties that you experience. If we're born human beings, we experience the suffering, the stress of birth, of mortality, of aging, of illness. Of being separated from that which we love, associating with that we don't love, not getting what we want. All these things create stress and difficulties to one degree or another. And so think of some of the kinds of suffering you experience, whatever stresses are in your life, big or small, doesn't matter. And imagine that there are like a darkness or a smoke or something like that surrounding you. And as you inhale, take them into your heart. And as you exhale, imagine light, warmth coming from your heart, touching you, enfolding you. With this thought, may I be free from suffering. May I be free from suffering. So if you have a worry, breathe that in. And as you exhale, send yourself calmness, acceptance. You can send yourself good health, kindness. If you're experiencing anger, take that in, that suffering, breathe it into your heart, accepting it, transforming it into friendliness. May I be free from suffering. And call to mind your dearest loved one. And you can imagine them here with you or think of their name. And imagine that whatever difficulties they're experiencing, whatever stresses and sufferings, you can breathe those in, take them into your heart, and send them relief. Taking in whatever difficulties they're experiencing, accepting them with your compassion, sending them freedom. Using the thought, may they be free from suffering. And if you like, imagine your compassion as a light or a warmth, touching them as you remove their difficulties and take it onto yourself. And call to mind a good friend, someone that you like, enjoy spending time with. Maybe they've been helpful to you in some way. And like yourself, like your loved one, they experience difficulties, stresses. And so let yourself be a force of compassion in their life, taking on their suffering, sending them freedom. May they be free from suffering. And think of someone kind of neutral to you. Maybe you don't know them very well, just an acquaintance. You don't like them, don't dislike them. And maybe you don't really know very much about them, but you know that they're born, they're mortal, they age, they'll experience unwellness in various forms. They have conflicts and difficulties. And so take that in. And wish them freedom. May they be free from suffering. And maybe there's somebody in your life who's kind of difficult, somebody you have some conflict with. And so extend this compassion to them also. And you may find some resistance to the idea. A lot of the time when we're not getting along with someone, we sort of want them to suffer. But this is a way for us to develop our compassion, which will do a lot of good in our lives. And bear in mind that just like yourself and your loved one and your friends have difficulties, so do they. And the difficulties that we have with them are often a result of them trying to deal with stress and challenges and doing it maybe in not very skillful ways. So if you could relieve them of their stress and suffering, maybe they wouldn't be so difficult. May they be free from suffering. And finally, all beings. Imagine that whatever being you encounter, you can save them from suffering. You know, sometimes we say the four great vows, and we say sentient beings are numberless, I vow to free them. That's what we're vowing to do. Encounter every suffering being with compassion. May all beings be free from suffering. And so just imagine that whatever beings there are, you can help liberate them. May all beings be free from suffering. To end this meditation, before we end, stop the sending and receiving. Just kind of bring your awareness to your breath. Maybe drop your attention down into your belly if you want to, or bring it to the tip of your nose. And then aware that you have this warmth at your heart. You have lots of compassion available to you. The more you use it, the more you have. And the bell will ring twice to end the meditation. Everybody all right? Okay, good. So the last time I was on Zoom with you, I talked about compassion. I talked about compassion in a couple of different ways. As a skillful state of mind to be cultivated, the way we just did. And, sorry, I'm going to record audio too, so I can put that on a podcast or something. Anyway, so we talked about compassion as a skillful state of mind before. And we also talked about compassion and gratitude, sort of how those two things relate, and our awareness that we benefit from countless acts of compassion that happen on our behalf. And that we're transformed spiritually, not only thanks to the compassion of the Buddha and others who made the teachings available to us and things like that, but also we're transformed spiritually by our own compassion when we develop it, our ability to see suffering as it appears around us and respond to the suffering we find with compassion. So to develop compassion as a mental state and also develop our awareness that we live thanks to compassion, so few things that we can do. Meditation practices like Tonglen, which we just did, and Metta Bhavana, which we do. Even reciting the Metta prayer like we did earlier. Those are all ways of developing compassion. And it's kind of interesting. I was talking at the UU church where I'm leading a group in Massachusetts now about this, and I can't remember what somebody asked me something about recitations and stuff, and I mentioned the "May I be happy and well," may I learn compassion is the final part of that, and it struck me as we were talking in that particular context for some reason how brilliant it was that Kai Tian put that there. So our spiritual practice, we develop wisdom, we develop compassion, but a lot of times we don't really see compassion as being a component of happiness. And so, when we do that prayer, we say, may I learn compassion, but we also say, may all these other people that we're praying for, may they learn compassion. Because it will add to their happiness, but also makes the world we live in a better world. So, and Nikon, a number of you have worked with Nikon with me. The first question, what have I received? What gifts have I received? It's really all about seeing how supported we are by others. And that often takes the form of acts of willful compassion. And even when it's not willful, even when somebody's not doing something specifically for us, our relationships with others, our society, is kind of based on mutual support, which is compassion. When we're helping other people, we're engaging in compassion. So even when we're just driving down the highway and obeying the rules, that's still compassionate. And by the way, a lot of times some religions talk about God's grace, and when you look into that, the way like some of the more enlightened ministers talk about it, I think it's very similar to this awareness that we have when we do Nikon or when we say the Nimbutsu, that we're living in a world where we get most of what we need just by being here. Does that make sense? So feeling compassionate is nice, but it's not really enough. Compassion is really an active process. And so that's what I want to focus on tonight. So actions in Buddhism aren't just physical actions, bodily actions. We talk about actions of body, speech, and mind. And so Greg Creech has this axiom that he encourages people to use, lead with the body. Sometimes we don't feel like doing certain things. So, okay, you don't feel like doing it. Get the body moving in that direction, and you'll do it, and you'll probably end up feeling like it, or at least glad that you did it. And it's kind of the same way with compassion. So people come to Buddhist meetings and they've heard about Buddhism and they think it might help them with problems they're having and stuff like that. And they always go to the kind of sexy stuff. I want to learn how to meditate, right? But when the Buddha taught, when someone came and said, well, what is your practice? He really started with dana, with being acts of charity, with giving, developing a giving heart, because if you can't do that, then it's very difficult to let go of stuff that's creating stress and suffering. We cling really hard sometimes to things that not only do we not need them, but they create problems for us. If we can learn the benefits of sharing, of letting go of stuff, of giving and doing caring things, then that helps prepare the mind for a lot of what we're going to do in meditation when we develop these states of mind. And so, what could you do for dana? Well, of course, you could support your local Buddhist organization. We always appreciate that. But there's an awful lot of charitable organizations out there that you can help. Being kind to a friend, helping a friend out with something, sometimes just smiling at somebody, is a huge gift, just accepting someone and giving them the gift of your presence. So, think about your life as a way of giving. And that's part of developing a compassionate way of life. So also the precepts, the Buddha talked about the precepts as acts of compassion and as gifts. So, the precepts, nobody wants to hear about the precepts. When you first start talking about it, it's like, yeah, don't do these things. But that's really not it. We make these vows to refrain from doing things that we know could potentially cause harm. And so in doing that, we're giving others the gift of freedom from the harm that we could have caused them. It sounds like a stretch, but if you think about that a little bit, in terms of day-to-day stuff, now most of us don't go around killing people or stealing and stuff like that. But you look at things like to not engage in harmful speech. How many times have you had the opportunity to say something kind of nasty to somebody? And you could not do that and give them the gift of not hearing that nasty thing you were going to say to them. It's pretty profound when you look at it that way. And, and it really can help transform your relationships too. So this kind of the first two steps in compassion. Dana, sila, giving, charity, kindness, and withholding harm, refraining from harm. So compassion sometimes can be hard. We were talking about refraining from harmful speech. maybe it's pretty easy to not say the nasty thing, but can you say the kind thing? Then this is the next step, compassionate speech. How can I talk to you in a way that's going to make you feel better? And a lot of times, people will come up and go, I felt like I really needed to teach them this. This was a learning moment for them. Like, no, that's not really what was going on. You really wanted to tell them how wrong they were. You know what I mean? Now, there are people in our lives, certainly in situations where there are some teachable moments, and we, if it's appropriate for us to do that, fine. But look first and go, okay, what can I do that's really coming from a place of kindness and caring? And that will make you a more compassionate person. I was talking earlier with Jennifer, and it's an election year. Right? There's going to be a lot of unkind speech, a lot of unkind activities. In fact, there are people who make a whole lot of money trying to make us hate each other, because they can make a whole lot more money off of our hate, right? And amass a lot more power. So part of getting through a situation like that for us would be, we know all these terrible things are happening. We don't have to also do them, right? It's hard, because when we see injustice, we want to do something for the injustice. And that's not a bad thing. One of the criticisms Buddhist organizations get sometimes is that people look at what we talk about and we think it's all about, the inner world, but we're a part of the outer world too. And so our practices should be helping us have a positive impact on the worlds that we live in. So can we speak about injustice? And speaking about injustice, speaking out about injustice is a compassionate action. Can we do it without creating more harm? So to live in a world in a compassionate way is about doing as little harm as you can, partly, but also about helping to prevent harm. So it's not just about, not engaging in harmful activities, but also about engaging with harmful people in ways that are helpful. So you remember when I talked about this, and I talked about the Buddhist conversation with the monk who was going off to the north, and the Buddha said, "Oh, yeah, those people up there are pretty rough. What are you going to do when they start calling you names?" "Oh, well, I will think, those people are so civilized. They're not hitting me with sticks." "What are you going to do when they start hitting you with sticks?" "Oh, these people are so civilized. They're not throwing stones at me." We kind of have to go through that process a little bit. Look at the people that are doing the injustice and try to see them as human. That's kind of the first thing, because the people who make money doing this stuff, they want to dehumanize other people to you. And an awful lot of the harm done in society historically has been when we can create this idea that somebody else is not as human as we are. And so if we can see others as human, maybe we can at least not create more stress and more suffering. And I think it's kind of incumbent on us to see ourselves as peace builders. So I just started thinking about this recently. I haven't thought it all the way through yet, but you know what peace building is? So I'm part of Zen Peacemakers, and Zen Peacemakers is kind of about the inner life thing, not knowing, bearing witness, taking action based on not knowing and bearing witness. So we can talk about that another time. But peace building is really about seeing your surroundings in terms of where the peace is not happening. Where's the violence? and understanding really what that violence is. So it's real easy to see if somebody's hitting somebody, that's violence. It's less easy to see when society has created a structure where it's okay for somebody to hit somebody, you know. And so, you know, we can look at where our society has had laws that made it okay to oppress a group of people or to mistreat a group of people, and it's not prosecuted and that sort of thing. And then there's cultural violence, where it's not just about the laws and the physical structures, but even about the way we think about one another. And that's actually the stuff that's the hardest to get rid of. And that's the stuff that really, they all have to change. So it's kind of like, if we want to be a compassionate person, sure, I can change my mind. I can do Tonglen meditation and I'll start feeling compassionate. But I'll develop a real compassionate heart a lot quicker if I'm also refraining from harmful speech. If I try to be aware of what I'm saying, right? And then try to stop it when I get ready to say that nasty thing. And even better, if I stop from setting myself from saying the nasty thing and do something nice for somebody. And even more, if I can restrain my acts of the body, you know, which is really the low-hanging fruit. I might encounter somebody and not like them. I might have a real tough time feeling compassion towards somebody. But the very least I can do is not physically do something nasty, right? Now, we don't go around punching each other usually, or, you know, but people do some pretty outrageous stuff sometimes when they're angry at one another, even passive aggressive things and that sort of thing. So if you're mindful, like, what am I doing with my body? And then the Buddha had this conversation with Rahula, his son. Rahula ordained when he was like 7 years old. And so he apparently had lied about something. And so the Buddha called him aside, and it was like the best father-son talk in history. You know, he says, Rahula, do you know what a lie is? Well, yes, I know what that is. He goes, well, what do you think of someone who would tell a lie? You know, they're probably not too good, you know. The Buddha goes, okay, so let me tell you something. He says, when you get ready, when you're about to do something, some act of body, take a look at this thing you're about to do and think, this thing I'm going to do, would it cause harm to me? Would it cause harm to someone else? If the answer is yes, don't do it. He says, if you look at something that you've already done, you can think, this thing that I already did, could it cause harm to me or someone else? And did it cause harm to me or someone else? And if so, don't do it again. You know, and then he goes through, like, this thing you're thinking about doing, you know, examine it this way, and, you know, and look at everything you're going to do or might have done or thinking about doing or talking about doing, and look, is this going to cause harm? And if so, don't do it. But if it's going to cause happiness, by all means, go for it. So we can do that same thing. And he talks about actions of body, speech, and mind. Now, when we think about actions of mind, does thinking bad thoughts hurt anything? Well, if we're mentally rehearsing anger, we're going to be angry people. And if we're angry people, we're probably sooner or later it's going to either come out of our mouth or it's going to come out in our actions somehow. So if we do all of three of these things, actions of body, speech, and mind, we're going to be less harmful people, and we're going to be more compassionate people. Now, you know, kind of an interesting thing about compassion. Somebody says, oh, you know, Buddhists practice compassion. And then, well, what does that mean? You're going to get a bunch of different answers, right? I think I understand last week somebody talked about the 5 blind men and the elephant. Is this true? Mm-hmm. Did you have this conversation?
We did the sutta on that.
Yeah.
Oh, you did the sutra on that. Okay. So, yeah. So, you know, there's one guy feels the elephant's side and says the elephant's a wall, and another one feels the ear and says it's something else. So there's another story that's kind of like that, where there's 5 blind elephants. and they encounter a Buddhist monk. And so the first elephant examines the monk on him, and he announces that Buddhist monks are flat. And the rest of the monks examine them, or the rest of the elephants examine the monk, and they agree that the Buddhist monks are indeed flat. We don't want to flatten things out, right? We want to encounter things as they are. And so that's why, with compassion, it can take a lot of different forms. And each of us can approach it our own way as our own practice to kind of look at ourselves and see, all right, where do I need to be doing that's going to make me a more compassionate person? Recognizing that if I'm a more compassionate person, I live in a more compassionate world. And that's kind of the big transformer, is when you can see that and you start to feel that you live in a happier place because you're creating more happiness. So anyway, that's enough for me tonight. Does anybody have any questions or comments? Oh, actually, there was one more thing. Self-compassion. It's important. And when we did that meditation, we start with ourselves, recognizing the stress that we experience, wishing ourselves freedom from it. That's really important. But also being aware when we're taking on too much. That's there's a thing called compassion fatigue that's very real for some people in certain jobs. The other thing too, though, is that this has actually been studied. There's a sociologist, I think, at the University of Texas, who's done a lot of work on the field of self-compassion. And she's a Buddhist, and she, had done meditations like the ones we've done. And she realized as she was talking to friends of hers that a lot of them were really hard on themselves about stuff. And then she realized she was too. She was really hard on herself. And so kind of started measuring this and found that almost everybody was a lot tougher on themselves than they were on their friends and that kind of thing. So, be aware of that. Remind yourself, may I be happy and well. May no harm come to me. May I learn compassion. And now that doesn't mean that you can't self-sacrifice. Certainly sometimes we put the needs of others ahead of ourselves in a healthy way. But be aware of how you're feeling too. If you're burnt out, it's pretty hard to help other people. So look out for yourself. So anyway, that's all I had on my mind tonight. Questions or comments?
When you see somebody standing on a street corner and you got signs, how, and that's probably not true, and then you say, but it might be true. So
Wait a minute. Well, what's not true?
when you see, it's not true that they're homeless,
Oh, okay.
okay? But then you think, that might be true.
Yeah.
Where does compassion come into that? I mean, we see that all the time.
Yeah.
And we know that they're bused to particular street corners with their signs. And yet they need compassion because they're being controlled by other people or other situations. And so how do you know,
Yeah. So, when it comes to giving, there's actually a sutra, which maybe you could find and have a conversation about. I'll try to help you find it if you can't, because it's in the Pali Canon. It's basically the kinds of people who are worthy of gifts, and the Buddha ranked them. It's really interesting. It's basically, people who need it, but they're really not going to do anything too worthwhile. They're kind of down here, People who are going to do great things, they're up here. It's been pretty much, what you don't want to be evaluating all your gifts. You give because you give. So that's one thing. Now, I would say a better use of your money probably would be to support organizations that support people who are actually homeless. And you can also kind of plan and budget for that sort of thing. you know, that's not a bad idea. Contributing to the church that runs the kitchen here, you know, I mean, that would be a good use of funds. Handing a quarter to the guy on the corner with the street, with the sign that says homeless and hungry or whatever. I won't say don't do it. It's probably not the best use of the money, you know, but sometimes you give a gift because you give a gift, you know, and one thing that you can work with as a spiritual practice, if you want to, is sometimes try to do 20 acts of kindness in a single day. Okay, that's a lot. That's a lot. But, you know, it can be simple, and it's going to be hard to do if it's the day that you stay home, you know, and don't go anywhere. But, you know, a day when you're out in the world, you can open doors for people, and you run across the guy with the sign that says he's homeless and hungry, and great, give him a little money. It's for you as much as it's for him. It's going to probably benefit you more than it's going to benefit him. Now, if you think they're using the money for something harmful, I mean, that's a quandary, you know. The guy who comes up and says, man, I haven't eaten in 3 days. Can I have $1? You know, and you know he's going to go buy booze with it. That's a tough one. You know, I generally don't give them money in situations like that. But, you know, you can give money to like the neighborhood center, for example, you know, where they do feed people, that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Or an alternate idea might be, instead of giving him money, if he says he's hungry, buy him a sandwich. He has to eat it, right?
I'm too busy going where I'm going.
Well, and that's the thing, you know, if it's somebody who's standing out there in the median on 1792 with their sign, you know, you can't really go buy them a hamburger. And you also know that they've been out there for a long time. They've collecting money, and that's what they do. And that's a hard job, man. You know, think about that, standing out there. I mean, we're in Florida right now, you know, you see these guys when it's 110 degrees outside, you know, it's like, man, you'd be a lot better off, you know, finding a different line of work. But, you know, we all need to live. We need to eat. That's how they do it. It's up to you. You know, the important thing is to be generous. And then if you can kind of look at, okay, well, where is that going really? What's that supporting really? Yeah, that's not a bad way to be responsible with that.
Can you give an example, another example of self-compassion? I'm curious about that one.
Sure. So there's a couple of different sides of it. One is, you know, don't overextend yourself. Be, you know, self-care is important. A lot of people don't. I mean, this actually showing up here is a self-compassionate action because you're training your mind. You're making yourself happier by being here. But I've had people come to me and go, God, I get so stressed out, and I've got all these things I got to do. And you know, from the time I get up in the morning till the time I go to bed at night, and then I try to meditate, and my mind's just all over the place. It's like, okay, you know, take something out of your schedule. Right now, maybe you shouldn't be meditating. You know, if it's going to create your stress, meditate for 5 minutes or 5 breaths or something. You know, don't put too much stress on yourself. But also try not to get so busy that you don't have time for the things that actually help you maintain your sanity and your health and that kind of stuff. So that's one aspect of it. Another aspect is to so you're a tech guy, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So you may not encounter too much of this, but there are people who are like doctors and, you know, ministers, university chaplains, you know, that sometimes everything is going for somebody else. And there's people who do that in their families too. And you got to go, okay, so I'm feeling really crispy around the edges. Let me take a day off, be aware of that kind of thing. But probably the most common is people just really not being self-accepting. You know, expect perfectionism is kind of having no compassion for yourself. You got to be perfect, right? You got to do this right. You don't do it right, you're a terrible person. I mean, that's kind of where people go with this. You may not say as much out loud, but that's the sort of internal beating yourself up that people will do. And so notice, if my friend came to me and said, I made this mistake, what would I tell them? And usually, oh, don't worry about it. It's not that big a deal. Whereas, I've been beating myself up for this thing for 3 days, right? But if I was, if a friend came and said they'd done this, yes, no, okay, no big deal. You're buy you a beer, or whatever your friends do. That answer your question?
I think so, yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Where's a good place to go to learn how, well, not to learn how, where's a good place to go to hear guided meditations like the one you gave us today?
Insight timer.
And where?
Insight timer.
And judge, be sure you try to get a feel, judge the person, their grade, and it helps if you stick with Buddhist meditation because they're a different one. I'm not saying that others are.
There's a lot of, so what he's trying to say is there's a lot of nonsense on there. So just be careful what you're listening to,
How do you know? I mean, what broad guidelines even, how do you
Can
filter?
I?
Yeah.
You look through, sometimes you'll see prominent Buddhists that have been in the field and are respected. Sometimes you'll see the ratings. You should start with the brand like Buddhism.
I could do that on Insight?
Yeah, you can
Yeah.
filter
Just
things.
specify.
Like breath meditation, you can specify it. One thing we haven't done since Sensei Morris has left is meditating on body parts. And
Did I do that?
You certainly did back in
Okay.
the early days.
Oh, okay.
Back in the early days, that was
Well, there's not one on Insight timer though, right?
yes.
Oh, okay.
You can find about any type of meditation, in terms of Buddhism. I'm
Okay.
sure it
Okay.
other.
Yeah.
Search.
You can also cross-reference, if you see,
Pardon me?
you can also cross-reference someone and says, Evelyn Scher, Buddhist guided meditation. Look up Evelyn Scher and see if she's got a reputation.
I don't know any people, that's part of my problem.
Yeah, the Insight timer will give you names and
You can
stuff.
search.
Yeah, and then you can go to Google and go, okay, who is this person? Is this somebody that's worth listening to or not?
Yeah.
And you can also there's recordings of Thich Nhat Hanh stuff.
Sensei Morris.
I know, I did.
But he's on Insight Timer.
Yeah, he is, I've
So,
done them.
but here's another thing. Don't rely too much on recorded meditations. They're a way to learn techniques, but don't just sit and let other people meditate for you. Doesn't work. Okay. Learn how to do it and then do it. In my opinion, aware that this is going to be out there for the world to see, right? In my opinion, you should not really be listening to guided meditations most of the time. So when I do one like the one I did, I'm hoping that you're going to go, okay, I got that. I can do that. Simple instructions, straightforward. But when you go and somebody wants to guide you through some, abundance meditation or floating over a field of daisies meditation or whatever, it's really distracting you from training your mind, not training your mind. And the purpose of doing this is to train your mind. Yeah.
Because I haven't really, other than yours, and I haven't really questioned
Yeah.
Thich Nhat Hanh, see if he's on it and sort of.
So when we first started Volusia Buddhist Fellowship meetings, somebody had read Jack Kornfield's Path with Heart, which is a fine book. I'm not saying this to knock this. It's a fine book. And it has a bunch of guided meditations. And so somebody said, hey, can you maybe use these as a framework for guided meditation? And I said, yeah, well, let's try it and see how it goes. And it went really well. People loved it. But, he really kind of presents them as, okay, I'm teaching you how to do something here. And I probably tried 200 different kinds of guided meditation, and there's probably a dozen that I would actually encourage you to do, because what do? We let go of things that lead to harm, and we develop things that lead to happiness and health and all of those good things. And we try to develop those states of mind that are going to be good for us. So, compassion, goodwill, joy in others, good fortune, equanimity, that's pretty much what you need. And, the ability to concentrate. And so you don't need a whole bunch of different meditation techniques to be able to do that. Now, there are people who do like the Lam Rim meditations where you visualize bodhisattvas and all that kind of stuff. It's kind of cool stuff. Some people love it and get a lot out of it. I'm not one of those people, so I don't teach that. Nothing against it. I've sat in a room with people doing it. I said, that's pretty cool. I'd never have to, I'm not going to do it, but it's pretty cool. The parts of the body that he was just talking about, meditating on the parts of the body, that's good. It's if you really want to dig deep, read the Satipatthana Sutta.
The what?
Satipatthana is the foundations of mindfulness. And it goes to great detail through the whole mindfulness of what the Buddha really meant when he taught mindfulness. And it talks about things like meditating on the parts of the body and cemetery contemplations and all those kinds of things. It's cool stuff. You don't need it, but it's cool.
Thank you.
You need it if you're a Theravada monk.
Yes, you do.
Time is it? Well, it is after 8 o'clock, so being respectful of people's time, we should close the meeting. So I'm going to say the closing dedication, and then we'll do the dedication of merit together, right? We surround all beings with love and compassion. Particularly, we send loving thoughts to those in suffering and sorrow, those in doubt and ignorance, and to all who are striving to attain the truth. We pray for those seeking for loved ones lost to violence and for those seeking justice. To those suffering from illness, the grieving, and those ministering to the sick, we send forth oceans of compassion, comfort, and goodwill. May they be serene through all their troubles. May the infinite light of wisdom and compassion so shine within us that we all awaken into spiritual peace. Stand. Sabe sata sadahantu avera sukha jivino katang punya phalang maham sabe bhagi bhavantu te. May all beings always live happily, free from animosity. May all share the blessings that spring from the good we have done. And bow to the teacher, and bow to the Sangha. And thank you all very much for being here. It's wonderful to be with you. Thank you all for being here. It's nice to have you with us.
I have something I'd like to say to the Sangha. I had an experience a couple of weeks ago And one of them said, I called a nun a good girl.